At 95 years old, Amma woke up one January morning in interior Alaska and discovered her 4 sled dogs were gone. Outside, minus 68 degrees Celsius. Nearest neighbor, 40 miles across frozen wilderness. Firewood, maybe 40 days if she didn't waste a single log. She didn't radio for help. She didn't panic. She walked to the woodpile, looked at it for a long moment and said to herself, out loud, alone, "My mother survived 3 winters like this. I know what to do." 40 days later, her family arrived. She was fine. Not barely fine, fine. What Amma knew, what her grandmother knew, and her grandmother's grandmother, is a survival system so precise, so quietly engineered, that modern cold-weather training doesn't even come close to teaching it. And it starts with a piece of knowledge about fire that almost nobody understands. The Athabaskan people have lived in interior Alaska for at least 13,000 years. That's not a figure from a history book, that's 13,000 winters. Winters that regularly drop to minus 50 degrees Celsius, minus 60 degrees Celsius, minus 68 degrees Celsius and below. No insulated Patagonia jackets. No propane, no emergency services. They didn't just survive, they built communities, they raised children. They developed a knowledge system so refined that it functions like engineering, predictable, replicable, effective. Amma's story isn't a miracle, it's the opposite. It's what happens when a person has been properly prepared for a situation that would kill the rest of us. And understanding what she did, how she did it, reveals 4 survival principles so counterintuitive that most modern campers would call them wrong. They're not wrong, they're ancient, and they work. But here's where almost everyone makes the fatal mistake. And it's the first thing Amma checked that morning. Most people think survival fires need to be big, hot, roaring. That instinct will kill you when your wood supply is finite. Amma looked at her woodpile and did something most people never think to do. She counted it. Not, is there enough wood? She counted it. Estimated burn rate. Calculated days. 40 days of wood. If she burned it the way most people burn wood. But she wasn't going to burn it that way. Athabaskan elders don't heat their space. They heat their body. Huge distinction. Critically important. Most people build a fire big enough to warm the room. Big fire, warm room, wood gone in 2 weeks. The traditional approach, build the smallest fire that keeps you alive. Not comfortable, alive. Target interior temperature, not warm, not cozy, survivable. Around minus 5 degrees Celsius to 0 degrees Celsius inside, when outside is minus 68 degrees Celsius. That's still brutally cold by modern standards. But it's the difference between burning 40 logs a day and burning 12. 40 days of wood becomes 120 days of wood. The math changes everything. Small fires require constant attention. Not constant stoking, constant monitoring. Amma checked her fire every 45 minutes through the night. Not to add wood, to make sure she didn't need to yet. This is counterintuitive. You wake up more, sleep less, but you burn significantly less wood. It's a managed system, not comfort, precision. You can only tolerate minus 5 degrees Celsius inside if you're layered correctly while sleeping. Athabaskan winter sleep. Minimum 3 layers between skin and air, with a central insulated sleeping area, not the whole cabin, a corner of it. By sleeping in a reduced space, the body heat contribution matters. One person in a small insulated corner can hold minus 5 degrees Celsius with a much smaller fire than one person in a full room setup. Modern analogy. The difference between heating your whole house versus closing off one room. Dawn, interior Alaska, January. The temperature outside has been minus 68 degrees Celsius for 6 days straight. Amma wakes before the light. This is habit. 55 years of waking to check on dogs, check on fire, check on the silence outside that tells her everything. The silence is wrong. She listens for a full minute before she gets up. No harness jingle, no low morning whines from the dogs shifting position. Nothing. She pulls on 3 layers in the dark, she's been sleeping in 2, and opens the door. The cold hits like a wall. The dog yard is empty, chains lying flat on the snow. She stands there for exactly as long as it takes to understand. Then she closes the door. She walks to the woodpile. She doesn't count it dramatically. She just looks at it the way her mother taught her to look at any resource when you're alone. Not with fear, but with calculation. How many days? What rate? What adjustments? 3 weeks, she says to herself. Then, no, more if I'm careful. She touches 1 log, counts the rows. 40 days, if I don't waste any. She goes back inside and builds a fire half the size she'd normally build. But fire management is only half the equation, because you can have all the heat in the world and still starve to death in 3 weeks. And at 95 alone, Amma couldn't run trap lines the way she used to. So she used something older, something most people have completely forgotten. At minus 68 degrees Celsius, without sled dogs, a 95-year-old elder cannot range far from shelter. Safe travel radius on foot in those conditions. Roughly 300 to 500 meters before cold exposure becomes dangerous. That sounds like nothing. It's actually enough, if you know how to use it. Traditional Athabaskan trapping wasn't designed just for long-range harvest. It included home territory trapping for exactly these contingency situations. Snare lines set in concentric rings around the dwelling, innermost ring just 50 meters out. Small game, snowshoe hare, ptarmigan, squirrel. These animals move toward human settlements in winter, not away. Why? Debris, food scraps, disrupted snow patterns near structures attract foraging animals. The cabin itself is a trap enhancement. Amma's presence created the conditions that drew food to her. Athabaskan winter preparation includes elevated food caches, traditional cache houses on log stilts, predator-proof. Amma's cache wasn't empty. This wasn't luck. She'd stocked it in fall because this is what you do. Dried salmon, smoked meat, rendered fat. High-calorie, zero refrigeration required food. Modern equivalent would be 60 days of caloric supply. But the traditional calculation is different. Not just calories, but thermal calories. Foods that generate more body heat during digestion. Fat is the primary fuel. Dried salmon belly, rendered moose fat. High-fat foods digest slowly and produce heat for 4 to 6 hours after eating. At minus 68 degrees Celsius, that's a biological furnace. Not 3 meals, not 1 meal, a specific rhythm. Eat before the coldest window of the night, typically 2 to 4 a.m., to time peak digestion heat with peak cold danger. Amma woke around 1:30 a.m. every night. Small amount of high-fat food. Back to sleep. This technique is documented across multiple Arctic survival cultures. The Inuit use it. The Athabaskan use it. Military cold weather training has started incorporating it. It works because your body runs hotter while digesting fat than at any other time. And you need that heat exactly when the thermometer's at its worst. Day 5. Amma pulls on her outer layer, not because she's going far, but because outside is outside, and you never go outside without full respect for what's out there. She checks the inner trap ring, 50 meters from her door. A snowshoe hare. She resets the snare with practiced hands, bare fingers in minus 65 degrees Celsius air for under 30 seconds, then back into mitts. Her mother's hands had done this, her grandmother's hands. She thinks, My grandmother trapped alone for 3 winters after grandfather died. This is not a new thing, this is just the thing. Back inside, she adds the hare to a pot with a small piece of the dried salmon fat from the cache. Not a big meal, enough. She eats half now and saves half for 1:30 a.m. She's already calculated the calories against the cold. This is not desperation. This is a system. The food and the fire will keep Amma's body alive. But there's a third threat at minus 68 degrees Celsius that nobody talks about, and it has nothing to do with cold. It's what happens to your mind when you're 95 years old and completely alone for 40 days. Hypothermia gets all the headlines. But in extended solo survival, psychological collapse kills more often than cold does. Clinical studies on polar isolation show cognitive deterioration beginning within 7 to 10 days of complete social isolation. Decision-making degrades. Risk assessment fails. People make stupid, fatal mistakes. Leaving shelter, abandoning fire management, stopping eating. Modern survivalists treat mental resilience as a personality trait. You either have it or you don't. The Athabaskan approach treats it as a skill, teachable, practiced, structured. Amma didn't improvise her days. She structured them with the same rigor her mother had taught her. Fixed waking time. Fixed tasks in fixed order. Fire check, water, trap check, eat, woodwork or hide work. Rest, fire check, eat, sleep. This isn't busy work, it's cognitive architecture. Routine creates time landmarks that prevent the psychological distortion of isolation, where days blur and motivation collapses. Modern psychology calls this behavioral activation. The Athabaskan have been doing it for thousands of years. She talked, out loud, to herself, to the fire, to her dog's empty chains outside. This isn't eccentricity, it's functional. Vocalization activates different neural pathways than internal thought. It maintains a sense of social reality even in complete isolation. Amma talked to her mother most often, not as hallucination, as memory deliberately invoked. She'd recall specific conversations, specific instructions, specific winter days 70 years ago. This technique surfaces in survivor accounts globally. People who survive extended solo situations report deliberately summoning memory companions. Wilson, the volleyball in Cast Away, is a Hollywood version of a real cognitive tool. The dogs weren't just transportation, they were companions. Amma had 3 of them for over 6 years. She grieved them. She didn't suppress it. She didn't panic. She grieved, and then she moved on. Because her mother had taught her that grief held too long in a survival situation becomes a threat. She allowed herself 1 full evening, day 2, to feel the loss completely. Then she folded it away. She'd told herself, "I'll think about the dogs when I'm safe." This is a deliberate psychological technique. Deferred grief, not suppressed grief. The distinction matters. Suppressed grief leaks into decisions, creates cognitive load at the wrong moments. Deferred grief is stored and honored, just not now. Day 11. The cold hasn't broken. She's been alone for 11 days. Amma is doing what she does every afternoon. Working on a piece of hide, pulling sinew through with hands that have done this for 80 years. The work is automatic. That's the problem. When the hands don't need the mind wanders. She thinks about the dogs for the first time since day 2. Wonders where they went. Whether they're alive. She stops the thought the way her mother taught her, not by fighting it, but by replacing it. She hears her mother's voice. Not a hallucination, a memory so specific it's almost physical. Her mother, sitting across a fire just like this one, saying, "You're not alone until you choose to be." Amma says it out loud, to the fire, the way she might say it to a person. "I'm not alone until I choose to be." She goes back to the hide. The afternoon passes. But there's a fourth element to what Amma did that most people never hear about. The thing that Athabaskan elders call contingency preparation. The protocol you activate not when something goes wrong, but years before it does. This is where her survival was actually decided. The most dangerous myth in modern survival thinking. Survival is about how you respond to crisis. The Athabaskan understanding is different. Survival is decided by how you prepare before crisis exists. Amma's 40-day survival wasn't remarkable because of what she did during those 40 days. It was remarkable because of what she'd done over the preceding 70 years. Traditional Athabaskan elders passed down what could be called a contingency checklist. Not written, memorized, for solo winter scenarios. Amma had learned this from her mother from her mother. 3 generations of women who understood what solo winter in interior Alaska actually requires. The checklist isn't long. It's 5 things, but each one represents a category of preparation that most modern survivalists overlook entirely. Cache first, travel second. The fall cache isn't convenience storage. It's the survival system. Full before first snow. Always. Know your 500-meter radius as well as your own hands. Every elder-trained Athabaskan maps their immediate territory in detail. Every snare location, every wind shelter, every tree dense enough to break wind. This isn't paranoia. It's management. The fire split. Always maintain a secondary fire starting kit in a location separate from your primary. Fire goes out in minus 68 degrees Celsius because something went wrong. Don't let that something be your only starter. Amma's secondary kit, flint, birch bark tinder, and 2 fire starters her daughter had left on her last visit, stored in a birch bark container on the opposite side of the room from the main fire. Tell someone your 40-day protocol. Amma's family knew if they couldn't reach her for 40 days, come. Not 10 days, not 20 days, 40. Because shorter triggers generate unnecessary trips in dangerous weather. Longer is too long. 40 days is the calculated survivable window for her specific setup. They came on day 40, the distress signal, a specific arrangement of objects outside her cabin door, visible from the air and from the trail, that signals, "I'm alive, but I need help." It wasn't deployed during her 40 days. It was there in case she needed it. None of these protocols are written down in any manual. They exist because elders teach them. The conversation between Amma and her mother about these protocols happened when Amma was around 15. Then again at 25. Then again at 40, when her husband became ill and the possibility of solo winter became real. Each conversation added a layer. Each winter added practice. By the time Amma was 95 and actually needed the protocols, she'd been rehearsing them, mentally, physically, for 80 years. This is what modern survival courses can't replicate in a 3-day weekend. It's not a technique, it's a lifetime. The snowmobile sound comes from the east at midday on day 40. Amma hears it before she can see it. She's at the fire, working on nothing in particular, the kind of afternoon task that fills time without demanding thought. She doesn't run to the window. She adds one more piece of wood to the fire, a normal piece, not a celebration piece, just the next piece. And then she goes to the window, her granddaughter, and 2 of the neighbor men. They come through the door in a rush of cold air and noise, voices loud with relief, with questions, with the specific kind of energy people have when they've been afraid and now they're not. Amma watches them fill her cabin. Her granddaughter is crying, holding her, asking, "Koyo, are you okay? Are you okay?" Amma pats her hand. "Of course," she says. "I've always known how to do this. My mother did 3 winters alone. My grandmother did the same." A pause. Did you eat before you came? It's a long trip. Outside, the woodpile is lower. Not empty, lower, calculated correctly. She'd had 6 more days in reserve. Here's what Amma's story actually tells us. Modern survival training is built around the question, what do you do when things go wrong? How do you respond to crisis? How do you improvise, adapt, overcome? The Athabaskan approach, and it's not just Athabaskan, you find versions of this across every culture that's lived in genuinely extreme cold for generations, is built around a completely different question. How do you make crisis survivable before it happens? Amma didn't survive 40 days at minus 68 degrees Celsius because she's exceptional. She survived because her preparation was so thorough, so practiced, so embedded in the structure of how she lived, that the crisis didn't change what she was doing. It just changed her company. The fire management, the food system, the mental protocols, the contingency preparation. None of this was improvised in the moment. It was ready. It had been ready for decades. That's the real secret. Not a technique, not a trick. A philosophy of preparation so deep it becomes instinct. And somewhere in interior Alaska, there are other people who learned this from their mothers, and their mothers before them, and they carry it the way Amma carried it. Not as emergency knowledge, but as ordinary life. She was asked later if she was scared. She thought about it for a while. The cold was cold, she said, but I knew what to do. When you know what to do, there's less room for scared. If this story hit different than most survival content you've seen, it's because it's about something most survival content never touches. Knowledge that lives in people, not products. No gear reviews, no affiliate links. Just what one woman's family taught her over 80 years. If you want more content that goes this deep, traditional survival systems, indigenous engineering, the knowledge that kept people alive for thousands of years before modern gear existed, subscribe and hit the bell. I post once a week and every video is built the same way this one was, from the ground up, and drop a comment below with this. What's one piece of survival or self-sufficiency knowledge you learned from an older family member? I read every one,